Ready? Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. It's just a few minutes after 1. We've got a full slide deck to go through and want to leave opportunity for any questions that may pop up at the end. Welcome. I'm Paige Heintzman. For those of you that I've not met or worked with before, I'm TDOT's P3 Director of Delivery. I've got several folks that I'm going to introduce as part of introductions before we jump into our slide deck. I've got Nick Kanazowitz. Nick is our P3 Pre-Construction Manager. I've been with us for a couple of months, but has been with the department for quite some time, so very attuned to TDOT in many ways. We've also got Laura Doss. Laura is our Director of Professional Services, and then we've also got Chastity Bell, who's also supporting her from Professional Services. So I think between the four of us, we're going to cover you with our pre-submittal meeting that we're here for today for the I-24 Southeast Choice Lanes project, in particular for design and construction oversight services. So let's get in. I've already covered welcome and introductions. I'm going to spend just a few minutes going over just a very general project overview. If you're sitting in this room, you're probably familiar with the project, but I'll just be sure to go through the basics to give us a good baseline. And then I'll turn it over to Nick. Nick's going to go through some of the scope and just general overview of the advertisement itself, talk through a potential scope of work that's going to come out pretty soon as a draft form. And then I'll kick it over, or Nick will kick it over to Laura to go over just some general advertisement information, and then we'll wrap up our day together with some Q&A time. A little bit about our team. Our P3 team is small and lean. If you didn't already know that, we are supported and being led by our fearless leader, Brian Ledford, who is our Major Projects Bureau, and then I do sit in that P3 director role. I've got Nick, who supports me on the pre-construction side, and then we've also got John Davis, who is our statewide project manager and works on various components of the project. We also have a dedicated communications officer, Rebecca Hammonds, who is our fearless leader when it comes to public outreach and engagement. Specifically to this advertisement, it's important to note some of the primary contacts as it relates to the next stage of the project. So we're very close to what we call the post-let stage, especially once we hit commercial close here very soon in the next few months. As far as contacts, you've got myself and Nick there from TDOT's perspective in the owner's role. As detailed in the advertisement, sort of the day-to-day of this advertisement is through our program management consultant, our PMC, which is HNTB. That's led by Jeff Carpenter, who is the project director. Jeff's not here, but I am making eye contact with Dominique Romano, who is our post-let design manager. So again, the day-to-day, some of the oversight, some of the performance assessment for this contract is through our PMC, that being HNTB. We currently have a P3 GEC, a P3 General Engineering Consultant Services contract. So this is that contract that's currently in place will somewhat morph into this contract, that being a design and construction oversight for the post-let stage of the project. I believe the advertisement mentioned that there could be some pre-let activities. Some of that is very much dependent on time. A majority of the time and focus and energy and resources will be for the post-let, so after commercial close for the I-24 project. So what are choice lanes? Again, just a baseline. I'm sure many of y'all have seen this graphic or something very similar, but generally speaking, choice lanes are price managed lanes that are in addition to the interstate general purpose lanes that are already out there. They could be to the inside, they could be to the outside. In this graphic, they're to the inside at grade. They are price managed in the sense that they should provide a more reliable trip time and trip speed in exchange for a user fee. And so I mentioned that we have a P3 procurement underway, looking to hit commercial close later this year. Once we select a private sector partner, they will design, build, finance, operate, and maintain those choice lanes for the next 50 years. Specifically on just the general corridor limits for the I-24 Southeast Choice Lanes project. It's roughly 26 miles total. If you add up the 23, 3.5, 1.3, maybe a little bit over 26. I'm giggling because whenever we go out to the public and we talk about it being, the I-24 Southeast Choice Lanes project, everyone seems to be a little surprised that there's also improvements to I-40 and I-440, but that those are part of the project. So roughly 23 miles of additional choice lanes, the addition of choice lanes on I-24 between downtown Nashville, going out of town towards Murfreesboro, terminating just shy of the 840 interchange. There's also improvements to roughly 3.5 miles of I-40, starting around the Hermitage Avenue area, going out of town towards the airport. So it terminates just shy of Briley Parkway. And then lastly, again, a little over a mile, almost said less than a mile, a little over a mile of improvements to I-440 there at the junction of I-24 and I-440. So the limits terminate just shy of Nolensville Pike, if you're familiar with the area. So again, just a general overview of what we call the base project limits for the I-24 project. Speaking of base project, a recent milestone was receiving a finding of no significant impact approval of the FONSI from our FHWA partners not too long ago. A rewind to earlier this year in January, I believe, if my months are correct, we received an approved EA. So fast forward to now, we have a FONSI, which is great. A few things that are contained in that FONSI that it's on our website and really good information for anyone who is interested in the project to be aware of. Just a few changes from the approved EA to the FONSI, one of which is we made some just right-of-way refinements. We actually were able to decrease the right-of-way limits, which is always a good thing when you go down versus up when it comes to overall right-of-way. There is an executed, what we call Section 106 Memorandum of Agreement as it relates to some historic resources along the corridor, specifically related to Mill Creek Baptist Church Cemetery and Rogers Manufacturing. So that Section 106 that's in our FONSI details some of the requirements and mitigation measures associated with those two historic resources. Also in the FONSI is an executed biological opinion for the Nashville crayfish. There was a biological assessment put together for the EA, and then that BO came as part of the FONSI itself. The FONSI also details all of our public hearings and public feedback we received during the open comment period. We received over 800, I think it was closer to 900 formal comments through the open comment period. So those are all detailed in our FONSI with responses. And then second to last, we did put on what we call a visual impacts workshop in April of this year. And so the outcomes of that, the feedback we received from the public through that VIA workshop are also detailed there. And then lastly, a draft interchange access justification report is part of the FONSI. And we can officially say now we have an approved IJR. So we're closing the loop on some big milestones with the project. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nick, who's going to go over some of the specifics of the scope for this advertisement.
Thanks, Paige. So as you can see on this screen, the scope of services for this advertisement is quite vast, quite large. Really one of the big focuses is design. So it's DCOC, design and construction oversight. Design oversight SMEs will be required in several fields such as roadway design, hydraulics, structures, geotech. List goes on. Environmental and NEPA are very big. Geodetics and right-of-way will not have a large, role in this advertisement, but it's an as-needed basis. Right-of-way will be covered under another contract. Beyond design oversight, we do have construction oversight, QA, and really, so the developer in part of this P3 contract is responsible for the QA and QC. This contract is really helping us overview that QA, making sure they are meeting their marks along the way. So that's both in design and construction. This will include verification, sampling, and testing. Paige alluded to, there's a scope of work coming out in the next couple of weeks that will outline what these will entail. So if it's 1% testing of certain metrics versus 10%, they'll all be outlined in the upcoming scope. This is also reviewing the QMSP, DQMP, CQMP audit support. So all the acronyms, when your whole division is an acronym, there are all the acronyms out there. So design quality management plan, construction quality management plan. It's really reviewing those and holding the developer to those, assisting TDOT in reviewing those. Also support in tracking costs as needed, as well as helping and addressing contractual disputes as needed. So what does this look like? Paige mentioned earlier that the PMC is in place, and a lot of this work will run through the PMC. So from a submittal review process, this starts with developer preparing and submitting design construction documents. Those will be sent to the PMC, who will review those submittals and then distribute them as necessary to this DNC oversight consultant as well as TDOT. The DNC oversight consultant will perform the technical reviews of the developer submittals. So that's coordinating with the PMC to ensure consistency and level of detail are met, and providing written comments, opinions, and recommendations to the PMC. The PMC then will compile compliance reviews and comments from the DCOC, align the comments, verify responses, and submit those on to TDOT. So TDOT's role in here is really receiving the reviewed, commented, and submittals from the DCOC and the PMC and making formal approval decisions. So a lot of the decisions are not approving, they're more concurring in this instance. So from the TDOT Special Project Team, this team has just been created quite recently. So TDOT will have special or semi-dedicated project SMEs in all of the different disciplines. Again, roadway, hydraulics, environmental, you name it. And these people will be responsible for accepting or denying of deliverables. So again, the technical review really falls on this DCOC contract and the PMC to compile, but TDOT is the one that will be approving or denying. Some key risks and challenges that we see in this contract include just the accuracy or legitimacy of submittal comments, scheduling constraints. So once a submittal, or for the large part, once a submittal is accepted, there's a 21-day time frame to review and get back to the developer. So that is, locked in stone, written in stone. Not much wiggle room on those. Third-party coordination, so that's either with local governments, utilities, and railroads. That is a risk that is more so on TDOT. So really it's helping with those meetings, helping with that coordination. Developer coordination between, again, them, the PMC, and TDOT. Environmental reevaluations, and this includes IAJR reevaluations. That's a big, it'll come with the, moving from the conceptual design through final design, as well as QA compliance. So the standards and requirements or contractual documents that really govern this project as well as this contract are the concession agreement. And within that concession agreement, there are technical requirements. And these requirements include everything from TDOT standard drawings, TDOT design guidelines, ASHTO requirements, the Green Book. Everything is covered in these technical requirements, and that is what we hold the developer to with this contract. So the estimated project schedule. So as you can see right now, July 14th is the pre-submittal meeting. It also happens to be the day that the proposals are due for the I-24 Choice Lanes project. August 26th will be the selection of the best value proposer. September 21st is when these proposals are due. October 5th through the 9th are going to be the oral interviews and presentations for this contract. As Paige mentioned, October 14th is the deadline for commercial close. It's expected to be sometime in that early October timeframe. Early November will be the phase 2 selection results and onboarding of this contract to the DCOC. And you can see this kind of overlaps with early work submittals. So early work submittals can occur anytime from the commercial close on, and that is things like the design quality management plan, construction quality management plan, and those are all, or even just design documents in general. So that is really the bulk of the submittals, design submittals for this project. It starts before we even onboard, and so it'll be a lot of us coming in, hitting the ground running, and working through those submittals. Summer 2027, I think it's July 12th is the deadline for financial close, and that really marks where major construction activities can begin. So final design submittals happen after that financial close date, and major construction and that whole construction oversight starts in summer 2027 and runs through completion of the project, which is slated to be, 2036 or so. With that, I will hand it over to Laura to talk about contracts.
Okay, so we're going to start off with ineligible firms. So like Nick and Paige both said, this is going to be managed by the PMC. So TDOT's PMC provides day-to-day oversight of this contract, and therefore they cannot pursue this solicitation or participate on any team in any way. Consultant role and exclusivity. Selected consultants will serve exclusively as TDOT's owner's representative. Consultant and sub-consultants are prohibited from participating on the P3 developers team. And then protection of TDOT's interest and independence of judgment are mandatory. Conflict of interest requirements. Firms must promptly disclose any existing or potential conflicts of interest to TDOT. Under policy 10105, the consultant and its sub may not enter into other TDOT contracts that create or involve a conflict of interest without prior written approval. Conflicts that cannot be mitigated or waived may render a firm ineligible. Firms may not hold any direct or indirect financial or personal interest in contracts connected to this work outside of their TDOT retention. Now we're going to move to critical dates. So I want to start out by saying that Brian Williams is the contact from professional services. So if you have questions, email the PS advertisements mailbox, but you can address them to Brian. He'll be the person that you'll talk to. If you have questions, you want to talk to somebody on the phone, there's a phone number there you can reach out as well. It's just going to take you straight to a voicemail. Leave a voicemail, we'll call you back. So don't be alarmed if you don't get someone picking up. For the pre-submittal meeting, that's today. Questions are due September 4th by 4 o'clock. Proposals are due September 21st by 4 o'clock. And then presentation/interviews are the week of October 5th. And then we anticipate selection results being in November. All these dates are subject to change, so keep your eyes on the website. If you have not already signed up for our consultant mailing list, I recommend that you sign up for it every morning. If we make a change the day before, you'll get an email letting you know that a change has been made. It doesn't tell you what the change has, but you can go and scour the internet for that. So proposal submission requirements. You have to be pre-qualified or have a completed pre-qualification filed. That applies to the prime and all of your subs. So you should verify before you get into a situation with any sub-consultant that they have submitted their pre-qualification package to the department or that they're on the website. If you have questions, you can reach out. We have an email box, tdot.ps prequals, and you can reach out to them and ask them for a status update or verification if you can't find a firm. We verify that on the back end, but you should also verify that on the front end before you go partner up with somebody. So you'll fill out the DT 330 Part 2. That's part of the proposal that you're submitting. Within the advertisement, we have limited Section E, so it's no more than 10 pages. So that's your resumes. Section F is the projects, no more than 5 projects. And then the packet as a whole shall not be more than 40 pages, including front and back cover, excluding Section H. Pay attention to these numbers. If you are over any of these numbers, your proposal is going to be deemed as non-responsive and you will not move forward. Also, all proposals must be submitted electronically to professional services and should be in a PDF format with the name that is listed there in your subject line of the email and received on or before 4 o'clock. Also, let's go over the evaluation criteria. So for 25%, we've got team capability and work experience. So section C, D, and E. So C and D, C is basically your kind of organization layout. D is your org chart. And then section E is your resumes. Past work experience in the required disciplines. Section F, like I said, is the projects. And section G is the table that goes along with Section F, telling who those people are that were listed in the projects that they're on. Staffing qualifications and availability. So this is sections D and F. This is the staffing matrix for primes and subconsultants. So we are requesting that staffing matrix list the aspects of work that both the prime and subs are proposing on, as well as any relevant certifications or licenses held. So if you reference back to the design guidelines, the environmental guidelines, any certifications that are required, even on the CEI side, you need to list that clearly within your proposal so that we can verify that you have what is needed to move forward. For 15%, we have the technical approach in section I, as you explain how you understand the project and how you're going to approach the project. And then part 5 is 20% is the presentation where you're going to come in and present to us. So all proposing teams will be scheduled for in-person presentations. So the way that that's going to work is you all are going to submit your proposals to us, and either that day or the following day, you'll receive an email from professional services with a link to schedule an interview with one of those dates and times. It's going to be like first come, first serve, so it'll just trickle in that way. The presentations are going to be downtown in the Tennessee Tower. If you haven't been in the tower before, you have to go through security to come in, so make sure that you have your license. They have to run that through. If there are several of you, I think we limit this to 5 people. So you need to allow for enough time for the 5 of you all to get through security in time, because if you're late showing up to your appointment just because you didn't adequately prepare for that, well, that will just be unfortunate for you because we've got a schedule to keep. The presentations are 30 minutes. So that will be you presenting to us a summary of the proposal, the qualifications, and any relevant experience you have. And then it'll be followed by a 15-minute question and answer session that we will ask you questions, you provide us answers. We will be keeping time for 45 minutes. At the end of 45 minutes, regardless of whether or not you've answered all the questions, that will be the end. So keep that in mind. Make sure that you have a timekeeper as well. Like I said, it's limited to 5 people. So if you were planning on bringing an additional person just to click through your slides, that's one less person you're going to have. So we're going to make sure you only get 5 people in the door. And then as a reminder, contact info. So you can reach out to Brian at the T.PS advertisement mailbox if you have any questions. Do not reach out to Paige and Nick. You are now in the cone of silence. You should not be talking to them at all about this advertisement. If you have questions specifically about the project, there is a QR code there that'll link you to the project website as well. And then we will be posting this presentation. We'll be posting we're recording this meeting, so we'll post the recording as well, and then a copy of the sign-in sheet to our website as well. And with that, we'll move into questions. Here we go. Okay.
You said something earlier about maybe getting some more detail out about scope. That's kind of what I'm looking for, is especially utility coordination, right-of-way services. What is the GEC expected to do in those particularly?
So you're right. We do anticipate to get a draft scope of work out in the next 2 to 3 weeks to support this advertisement that would go into more detail of design, oversight, roles and responsibilities. Same on the construction oversight side of the house. I will say specifically for right-of-way, and I think it may have been a little asterisk next to right-of-way in particular in the slide deck. Right away, at least for this DCOC, this design and construction oversight contract would be limited and in a more support role on an as needed basis. We have right away services already procured, contracted through a current contract in place. So we're going to rock on with that. So the anticipation is that this DCOC contract would be in a support role if needed in the future.
Necessarily need an appraiser or a realtor, etc.
I think that is appropriate, to go down that path of thinking through it in a more general aspect at this point. But knowing that if there is something in the future that we would elect to leverage this DCOC contract for right-of-way services, that you, if you were the selected team, you could react accordingly with those resources. Yes.
For the scope of work, I have a question on pre-qualification. So the RFQ does not point out the specific project codes that will be required. Does the firm have to cover all the codes, or is it just whatever the team or the sub-consultant, whatever they're going to be targeting for their scope, they'll be qualified on that?
It's not limited specific codes, but you as a team need to be able to address all the items that are listed in the advertisement and that will be listed in the scope that comes out.
Perfect. So between you and your sub-consultant.
That's right.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on that? Does the prime have to be like 51%?
Yes.
Paige, will there be any small business requirements for the contract for the team?
No. I'm making eye contact with Laura to make sure I answer that correctly. I'm okay with a little silence. I can feel the silence, but because I will say, we're going to continue to, take in questions that obviously you can submit in writing, and then we would issue responses. I think we did issue a couple of answers to questions we had received to date last week before, July 2nd. So we'll continue that effort leading up to whatever day it was in September. So if you are shy today, there's future opportunities to get your questions answered. Yes.
Slides, I saw project management team is HNTB, and then there was a general engineering consultant. Has that firm been selected, or is that still to come?
So the general engineering consultant firm and contract is currently in place. So that's an active contract we have, and it'll stay active for the duration that it can. So that one's in place. The intention in showing that graphic as it morphs, I think it was sort of like an arrow leading into this DCOC, was just to show that there's currently a contract in place that's been supporting us, and we'll continue some of that support moving forward to ensure there's no lap in services as we continue this project that's moving at a crazy fast speed. So yeah, that one will stay in place. Yes. No, I would consider this DCOC the main oversight consultant contract for the post-let stage of I-24 to carry us through the next decade of design and construction. The GEC that's currently in place will have very specific tasks that they'll continue to rock on and move forward with that are not covered in this DCOC, if that makes sense, if I answer your question. Yeah.
It's current DNC contract. I mean, we already know the HTTP and their sub-consultants are included. What about the DNC contract?
So as far as, no, that's right. Yeah. Okay, well, 10 seconds of silence. We can wrap it up a little bit early. I'm sure Laura and her team will get all this information posted to the website soon, and questions can be funneled through Laura and her team formally. Nick and I, and I'm sure Laura and Chastity will hang around for a little bit. So appreciate your time. This is an extremely important contract for TDOT, and so appreciate your engagement as we move forward and hit a current milestone in front of us, but a lot of future milestones that would be associated with this contract. So thank you.